Hello, and you're very, very welcome to another Lunch and Learn.
Your local enterprise office, helping your business respond.
Good afternoon, and you're very, very welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Today, we're going to be talking about a fund by Enterprise Ireland called the Competitive Start Fund. We will be looking at other startups as well. We have some amazing guests today, and let me just show you our guests. We've got two of our guests here. Just show you. Oh, they're very excited. They really are. So here they are. Do you see them? So across from me there, we have Teri Smith. So Teri Smith is the manager at the High Potential Startup Division in Enterprise Ireland. And she's got 15 years experience helping businesses blossom in the Irish market and reach their full potential working in Enterprise Ireland. And down below us, we have the very glamorous Wendy from TeachKloud. A big hello, Wendy. Wendy has kind of revolutionized the creche and early childcare industry with her software at TeachKloud. The great thing about Wendy is she's applied and availed of this competitive start fund that we're going to discuss today. She's also knows the thing about raising a few quid as well. She's raised 750 grand at the beginning of this year, and more raising news on the way. So she's going to tell us how we can what investors look for when looking to invest in your business. Oh, and did I mention you were a finalist in Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur as well? So we look forward to hearing about your story. And another gentleman that's on the show today, and I'm just going to throw him in, is the wonderful Thomas McEvoy. Thomas McEvoy, how you doing, Thomas?
Very good.
Thomas is the head of enterprise at the local enterprise office in Louth. And Thomas is going to be talking about some of the other supports that are available for your business. So say the Competitive Start Fund isn't right for you, Thomas is going to be telling us what else is. So without that, let's get the party started. I'm going to temporarily remove Thomas and remove Wendy. And we're going to have a chat with Teri. So, Teri, I suppose the very, very obvious question to ask you to start off is, what exactly is Enterprise Ireland's Competitive Start Fund?
Hi, Greg, and thank you for having me on the show today. The Competitive Start Fund is an equity fund for early stage companies. So Enterprise Ireland supports export-focused companies in internationally traded services and manufacturing. And the fund has been running for over 9 years now. And we have 2 calls open at the moment, a Women Entrepreneurship call and an All Sectors call. And there's potential for up to 20 investments under each call or competition. So it's an equity fund. It's 50,000 in equity for 10% in ordinary shares in the company. And the co-funding amount is 5,000 in ordinary equity by either, the existing promoters, or it could be from an external source. So it's very much focused on supporting companies in the early stage, maybe that have already got a minimum viable product, have an export-focused solution, a level of innovativeness, so it's not a me too, and it's not focused on the domestic market only. And we support companies right across the sectors. So some examples would be for software solutions, SaaS models. It could be a life science product, a consumer product. So the company would need to be manufacturing or undertaking R&D, or an internationally traded service. And we have a list of our internationally traded service eligible activities on our website, and it's within the information that's available on our webpage on the Competitive Start Fund. So, delighted to be talking to the audience today. I know there's possibly a lot of local enterprise clients listening in today. And just to say that we do get a lot of our high proportion of our successful applicants in past Competitive Startup Fund calls have come from the local enterprise. And it's a great opportunity for those companies because it effectively, the 50,000 effectively helps to bridge from that early stage to raising a seed round. So the fund is really there to help companies that are export focused, have a minimum viable product, or a product maybe that's been trialed with an initial customer, and it's funding to support, market development activities, maybe some fine tuning of the product or service that needs to be done. And really, it's all of those milestones that need to be achieved to accelerate the company to growth and to gain that initial export sale. And ultimately, we're looking for companies that have the potential to grow to 10 jobs and 1 million in sales within 3 years, ideally. And so we're a particular shout out as well for companies that are focusing on solutions for decarbonisation or climate change. So it's not exclusive to those, but we are particularly interested now, considering the current issues with climate change, for companies to come forward with products. So that could be an ICT product, it could be a consumer product, but so I'd really kind of just like to give that shout out that we are particularly interested in applications in that space as well.
Okay, brilliant. Because I think very often, sometimes we just think it's always ICT products that people are looking for. So it's not. So there's two funds, competitive startup or start funds at the moment that are open for applications. One is all categories. So regardless of your business, if it's not ICT, it's okay as long as it fits the criteria, you can apply. There's also a female entrepreneur one as well. Tell us about that.
That's right. Yeah, every year for the last number of years we have run women entrepreneurship or female entrepreneurship competitive start fund. So in this particular category, it's the same sectors, eligible sectors, but the specific requirement is that the company must have at least a woman or multiple women that have a minimum of 25% shareholding in the ordinary share capital of the company. And that would be at the point before Enterprise Ireland's first tranche investment would be released. So if it's an individual applying, they would, and they're successful in the call, they would have to incorporate their company. So they would need to show in the application how they would meet the criteria, and they need to have a place on the management team. So that's kind of the main differentiator. And I'd just like to point out as well that for the women that are successful in that particular call, there's also an offer of a place on the Innovate Accelerator program, which is run by Dublin BIC. We've run it now over the last 3 years, and basically it provides mentoring and support and extra kind of non-financial support and access to networks, access to advisors. It's a 12-week program. There's no cost to the company, and it's a huge opportunity to help accelerate those companies get to seed stage. And we've had quite a number of successful companies that have come through that the CSF and that particular program.
Okay. A question that people, because I applied for the Competitive Start Fund in the past at the completely wrong time. I shouldn't have done. I wasn't ready. I didn't have anything in place. And despite the work I put into my application form and the pitch that I gave, I failed, right? And rightfully so. So my question for you is, what stage does my business need to be at to be ready to apply for the Competitive Start Fund?
Okay, so there are a number of things. I mean, the main thing is to look at there's a great information on our webpage, and there's also help in terms of the training sessions that have been run by the National BICs. We have 2 of them next week. There's one on Tuesday with West BIC, and there's one on Wednesday with Dublin BIC. They're done online. So thanks, Greg, for highlighting those dates. So I'd encourage anyone who's not sure, I will answer your question in terms of being more specific, but the first thing I would say is, to anyone who maybe hasn't started an application and wants to learn more about it, to contact the National Business Innovation Centres. The details are on the screen, and to sign up for one of those sessions next week. And if there's no spaces available, which can happen because it is quite competitive, the email address is there. Will connect companies and individuals into contacts in the National BICs, and what they will do is they will work one-on-one with a company on their application, and they can also help with the eligibility criteria. So just to go back, there are quite a number of eligibility criteria, but in terms of the stage, so be careful that you meet the eligibility criteria. In terms of the stage, so assuming that you've met the eligibility criteria, it's really the stage kind of beyond, I'd say, early feasibility, beyond early concept stage. So you need to have, ideally a minimal viable product, or, one that's maybe live in beta, or you've maybe done some initial market validation with a customer. If you're at a concept stage, I'm just thinking maybe about setting something up, you're probably a little bit early for a competitive start fund, but there is other supports available at that stage. So the local enterprise provides support at that early stage and early stage mentoring as well. And there's also some early stage mentoring that's available from the national BICs for those companies that are trying, or entrepreneurs that are trying to think through, do I have a viable opportunity here or not? So, it is companies that are that more developed, and maybe within 6 to 9 months of raising a seed fund. But, it's a very competitive program, competitive in the sense in terms of the volumes of applicants that we get. So I'd say to anyone, like, the more progressed, don't be put off, I suppose, if you don't feel you've got a full minimal viable product. If you've got a good team and, a really unique opportunity, and you're getting good feedback from the market that this would be, a good idea or a good product or service, what I would say is, okay, you might be a little bit premature and may need more work to be done. But, if you have, even a basic product that's getting feedback from the marketplace, consider applying. But bear in mind that you may be disappointed, because it's really who you're up against in the competition. And sometimes people get disappointed if they don't get through. And often it's purely the level of competition, as opposed to their opportunity is never going to be successful. So we have seen entrepreneurs and companies come back a number of times, and I know it can probably be very frustrating applying more than once, but even if you don't get through on the CSF calls, and perhaps because you're maybe that little bit premature in terms of stage of development, there, what we do in those cases is we give feedback, and we also can point the companies to where they can get support, because believe it or not, companies do apply and entrepreneurs do apply, but actually maybe haven't introduced themselves at all to the local enterprise. So often, we can facilitate that introduction and give feedback and steers, and make sure that the company is getting helped. And maybe in a couple of months' time, they might reapply again and then be successful. So, don't lose heart, I suppose, is the point.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that you hit a very, very nail on the head. It's amazing. When you're going for any sort of funding, doesn't matter whether it's public funding or private funding, it's a competitive process. So you got to put the work into your application, present your business in the best possible way, and make sure you get your timing right. And I know Thomas is going to pop on a little bit, and certainly for people that maybe aren't quite ready for the CSF application now, Thomas is going to talk how the local enterprise office will advise you, support you, and nurture you in preparing maybe for a competitive start fund application in the future. The question that was in, now this is very similar to what I was asking, but James was asking, a company soon starting at the New Frontiers Phase 2 incubator, I presumably, would there be any point applying for the competitive start fund, was presumably what he's asking there.
Okay, so it's a matter of timing, and someone could apply for competitive start fund and be on the New Frontiers program. Now, the way it works, actually, there is a stipend funding available under New Frontiers. So at the point at which the enterprise will say James were successfully applied for CSF and was successful, there is a requirement to forego other state funding. So, for example, if you're a local enterprise client already and you're getting feasibility support, for example, once you get the offer for a competitive start fund, you have to work to either drawing down the rest of that grant, or if you don't think you can time to draw it down, you're given, I think, up to 12 weeks from the date of approval of the competitive start fund to draw down the funding. And generally that is enough, and a lot of companies don't have to forgo. But on the New Frontiers, James could still participate on the programme, but there could be no overlap in the payment of the stipend. So, if his stipend was paid up till, say, the end of August, and he made his offer at the end of September for the competitive start fund, there wouldn't be a problem. And if he needed to, it's the funding. There could be no double grant aiding, but he could potentially stay on the program and get that advice and support. The New Frontiers is fabulous program. So, it's important that somebody isn't pulled from the learning aspect of it and the mentoring that they can get. But we can't double grant aid, but he could still participate in that phase of the program.
Okay, brilliant. So, I mean, it is important that we don't rush things too quickly and then fail with our applications. We got to get our timing right. Couple of questions that have come in, and we've addressed them, but just to make sure that everyone's clear. So, how much money do I get? So, the competitive start fund is it's 50,000. Explain to me exactly how much money, if successful, I get from my business.
Okay, so it's 50,000 in an equity investment in ordinary shares, and it's released in 2 tranches of 25. So the way it would work is the requirement, or the co-fund requirement from either the promoter or the shareholders in the company, or it could be from a third party, is 5,000 in ordinary shares, and that would be released, invested just before the first 25,000 from Enterprise Ireland. So the first 25,000 from Enterprise Ireland would be for 5%, and the second 25,000 would be for a further 5%. So it's a total of 10% in ordinary shareholding in the company, and that's usually invested. Like the way it works is, you agree particular, commercial and technical milestones. So what's the money going to be spent on? And there's a mechanism then for reporting back. Companies assigned an advisor in Enterprise Ireland. They would report back. Here's what how I've spent the first 25. Here's what I've achieved. And there's almost it's a bit like a grant claim process, that there's a 2 tranche release of the funding. So we just want to make sure the project is on track, the money is being spent in the way that was expected, and the company's making progress before we would release the second tranche. But generally the 2 tranches are paid over 12-month period roughly. And the hope is then that gets the company to a point where they can maybe have achieved enough sort of in terms of the product development and in terms of traction in the market, and building out the opportunity to attract seed funding. Now, there are some companies that actually just take off and don't need seed funding, but it's rare. Generally, companies, need to will have a further round of funding, which we call our HBSU or seed funding. Usually at a stage, it could be 6, 12. Sometimes I've seen companies get CSF and it's 2 years before they get their HBSU or seed funding. So, and they've maybe been bootstrapping. They've got the CSF funding. Like, so getting CSF doesn't prevent a company getting other funding. Like, sometimes, in fairness, it actually can attract other kind of pre-seed funding. But it is probably one of the more important pre-seed funds in the marketplace, and it is at the moment obviously more challenging for entrepreneurs to raise money. So that's why we have the 2 million in funding available. There's up to 20 potential investments under each call. So that's why we're really keen to get the message out there as well.
Right, up to 20. That's fantastic. So there's
up to 40 in total.
40 in total. Okay, yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Question that came in, I think I know the answer to this, but do you have to give the money back? So again, this is investment. This is not, you don't have to pay the money back after you get it. Is that correct?
So there are particular clauses in the agreement. I mean, for example, as with any Enterprise Ireland investment, if we support the company to do a particular activity, and then it turns around and undertakes an ineligible activity, we do have some clauses to say, well, actually, you're in breach of your investment terms, etc. But generally speaking, no, the investment goes in ordinary shares. So ordinary shares is kind of locked into the company. So, unless there are particular terms there that, that companies need to be mindful of in the legal agreement, that, you can't get awarded for CSF, for example, and then set up, use the money for something completely different, like we do with ineligible activity. So if that happens, we may have to look for the money back, but, it's not something that generally arises, to be honest.
Sure, and again, just to be clear, someone said, I heard Enterprise Ireland owns part of your company if you get the competitive start fund. Is this correct? So just to be clear, if you get the competitive start fund, you get the investment. As regards Enterprise Ireland taking a stakeholding in your business,
Yeah.
what exactly is that?
Okay, so it is, as I said, 10% in ordinary shares,
Yep.
and Enterprise Ireland doesn't take any more than 10%. So going forward, that company would probably be fundraising again anyway, and Enterprise Ireland 10% would gradually get diluted unless we were to invest in the next round. And often we do invest in the future HPSU investment with the company. But just to point out, actually, we're quite different to a typical ordinary shareholder in the sense that we don't take a board place with the company. And actually, we're a developmental agency. So it's in our interest to support that company through our networks, our overseas networks. We provide mentoring, with the Innovate program. That's funded by Enterprise Ireland, and it's there to help build the skills and build the capabilities of the founders to learn about maybe areas such as sales and marketing and, building your team, developing your finances. So it's not just about the money or the investment. And I know a lot of people can zone in on the shareholding being taken in my company here. But actually, we're giving huge value to companies as well in terms of the non-financial supports that we can give. And really, it's in our interest to help you grow your company and drive growth in the company. So the 10% by Enterprise Ireland is going to be possibly diluted over time, and also if your company does well, there will always be other investors coming in, and sometimes getting equity into your company helps accelerate the growth. So you end up owning maybe as a promoter a smaller percentage of something massive, as opposed to 100% of something that's not moving on. So there is that learning there on understanding the importance of your sources of funding as well.
Absolutely. Now, Grania asked a question, a good question. Grania, thank you. Hello. If I apply, must I register as a limited company first?
Okay, you can apply, Grania, as an individual. So, we do accept applications from individuals. But if the company is successful, so if you're awarded, say you get to the end of the process and you're offered an investment, you would then need to incorporate a limited company to accept the investment. So, and it would be a limited company, yeah.
Super. Magdalena, let's think positive here, Magdalena. She's watching on YouTube at the moment. She's thinking worst case scenario. So what happened if after I draw down the 50K, down the line the business is not successful and closed down? So I think she's worried about you running after her with looking for the money back.
Yeah, well, it's the same with any process. So the company is not successful. Like we have had companies in the past, sometimes companies don't succeed and for different reasons. So it's an early stage investment. And there is a process that the company needs to go through. It may liquidate, or it may, sometimes companies are required actually. It might be successful, the promoter might move away from it, but the technology might be acquired. So there is a process for managing that, but the individual person themselves is not liable to pay back the money. So it's company law applies and those kind of processes. So, listen, we appreciate that not every company is successful, but there is, a formal legal process then, like any, as an ordinary shareholder, where it's the laws that would apply to any company liquidating. So, but it's not the individual themselves would not have to pay the money back.
Okay. Now, think positive, Magdalena, please. We're going to succeed. Also, Kate McDonald, we're a startup. We're developing a web-based software in the education sector, which is ready for consumer testing by the end of the month. Is CSF funding the right funding we should be applying?
Okay, so web-based software, education sector, ready for consumer testing. So yeah, it sounds, Trina, that there's some kind of a product there developed. And I think, listen, what I would suggest you do is consider notifying one of the national BICs, and I know the dates are up there, looking at our webpage and seeing, do you meet all the other criteria? Because I mean, I couldn't, like, broadly speaking, it sounds like you're in the right space. Web-based software into the education sector would be an eligible activity, but there are quite a number of other criteria. So I'd suggest you look at the webpage, contact, or have a good read at the webpage yourself. Familiarize yourself with all of the criteria, and contact whatever, depending on what part of the country you're in, contact your local business innovation centre, or you can pop an email to csf@enterprise-ireland.com. But I'd strongly encourage you can get one-on-one feedback and training and support on your application through the national BICs. But broadly, what you've described would sound as a reasonable enough stage to be consider applying. Yeah.
Okay. Talking of considering applying, the deadline's coming up pretty soon. So this is something for businesses we need to act on now. And we need to reach out either to our local enterprise office, maybe as a starting point, and have a conversation with them, get their advice of what they would do. You mentioned obviously the local BICs, really important to reach out and talk to them. And it's vital that if you're going to apply for the likes of the competitive start fund, that you get the help that's available to you. So remind us that deadline. Let me stick that deadline on. So it's coming on the 18th of August at 3 p.m. No, 3:05. It's too late. So
absolutely, it's competition.
So this is really important. This is something you need to start considering this week, and certainly acting on next week, so you're ready in time for that deadline. So
okay. And Greg, can I just highlight as well? There's two parts to the application process. There's an application form, which is an online form, and there's also a video. So a video pitch, and there's an opportunity to do some practicing on that, and then you do your final pitch. So I think it's just to highlight that both would have to be submitted by 3 p.m. So I'd advise anyone not to leave it to the last minute. There's nothing as awful as you've got and we have had people who've got technical hitches, and something happened, and my broadband went, etc. But because it's a competition, we have to be fair to all applicants. That if you're better off, try to get in there and get it in earlier rather than later, because you could put yourself under pressure at the last minute. Just to highlight that as well.
Brilliant. So there's an application form, which I was going to ask you. So what was the application form like, and a video pitch? Now, how does this? So is this can I do a pre-recorded video and upload it? Is there a time limit? Do I have to upload it live to the system? How does that video pitch get? Okay.
Yeah, so there is a platform there called Sonru, and there's a helpline there, and so it's open 24 hours, or it's an email, one or the other, and you don't record it yourself and upload it. So I suggest go into the application process, and again, it's something that the BICs will help with. So you'll get your one-on-one advice on that, but it has to be done through the platform on the link on the application system. It's not that you record it on your mobile phone and download it. So there's literally there's 5 questions, and you have to answer each question in sections. So that's something that you should definitely get practice with. There is an opportunity to do a kind of one formal live one. That is your formal application. Now, generally, there's the one opportunity, but if someone is really concerned and maybe wants to do it again, they can contact Sonru, who are the platform providers, and they can help maybe. But I'd really advise anyone do as many test runs as you can, but be aware of the questions that are you're going to be asked. So I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Be sure to read the webpage. It's quite lengthy, the webpage, but there's a lot of information there in terms of how everything operates, the scoring system, how the assessment process works. So the better armed you are in understanding all of that, the better application you will have. Give yourself the best opportunity and the best shot at it.
Yeah, brilliant. Another quick question in, so let's throw this up here. Clodagh, hello, Clodagh. So I get the €50,000 pitch for my business. I suppose the great question is, how can the CSF fund be used? So she's saying, can I use it for brand development or web design strategy? And do you offer support in these areas?
Okay, Clodagh. So, the cost categories that, competitive funds covers, it's everything from salary to any external parties you need to pay, like consultancy. It could be prototyping costs, any travel cost, etc. So, for example, in branding, if you needed to use a brand agency to help with something, they would that would come in under consultancy costs. If you have, you want to do the work yourself and you're taking the salary costs. So, it can theoretically can cover those areas, but the more important piece for you is to determine, is your product opportunity, is the stage of your company, do you meet all the eligibility criteria? Because after that, pretty much any cost in the company under salaries, consultancy, prototyping costs and travel, and capital actually as well. So if you needed to buy a piece of, software or, or a piece of, say, if we were making a product, you need to buy, a piece of machinery to do certain things. I mean, you mightn't get an awful lot with 50,000, but, capital is one of the, so basically any costs in the company to do anything. So broadly speaking, yes, you could. But there's also, just a flag as well, Clodagh, there is, if you're a local enterprise client, there's other ways to maybe help with those kind of costs, online trading vouchers. If you're an Enterprise Ireland early stage client, there's mentors that can help with some of these activities. So sometimes there is supports that are non-financial that can help you with some of the points that you've raised there on the costs around marketing as well as just paying for them yourself within the company.
Absolutely. I know Thomas will say, that's certainly something that when it comes to brand development and web design and strategy piece, that's, the trading online voucher is there for you guys and perfect for that type of need. That's brilliant. Couple of quick questions just before we wrap up. I've applied for the Competitive Start Fund before and got it with another business venture. I have a new business venture now. Can I apply again?
Okay, as I say, it depends a bit there. I think it depends, I suppose, what happened with the other company, and depends on the details of the situation. So if the other company is no longer in business and it's heading for a liquidation process or whatever, and your time is free to focus on another new company, and it's a different opportunity than before, you're not applying to set the same company up again, for example. So there are particular criteria around what would be eligible. So it depends on the facts of the situation, if I'm quite honest. But, if, we wouldn't support someone that's already given their time to another company. Like, we'd expect if they got the investment that they would be giving, I suppose, the majority of their time to this new entity. Sure. So it would all depend. I'd say the best thing to do is to look at the criteria, and if you're not sure, you still want to have a chat with us about it, drop an email to csf@enterprise-ireland, and we can have a chat to you, and we could check the situation with your previous company, because it's probably on our a company we've invested in, and we need to get under the bonnet a bit and look at the facts of the situation. So, sure. I think that those kind of questions are better checked with us directly.
Sure, and at the very end, we're going to share the email address, so we can,
thank you.
when in doubt, send an email, ask. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
Couple of questions, and then I want to get Wendy in. Wendy's very patiently waiting there all the way down in Cork. She's getting quite excited looking now. But the question was, so can you tell me very quickly what Enterprise Ireland are looking for in an application? So what kind of things are you looking to see in an application that's going to make you go, ding, 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 we're interested in this company? Okay,
so we're looking for international opportunities, and companies that can demonstrate that they have maybe not full market validation, but a fairly solid level of positive market feedback from either potential customers or thought leaders, etc. If there's some kind of trialing that has been done with customers, that would be very critical to see as well. The team is very, very important. I mean, the caliber and experience of the team. I mean, sometimes the team can be very small, but we do look for that. We like to see as well a lot of conciseness and clarity in the information that we're given, that we're not second guessing. So I'd say give as much information Don't assume we will understand what the situation is. If, for example, you've got a potential further trials with 2 customers, tell us who they are, and when those trials are going to take place. What feedback. I think feedback from customers is very, very important, and as much market information that this opportunity is going to be positively received in the market, and that you understand the market actually as well, and the competitive landscape is very, very important, and being clear about what you need the money for and what it's going to achieve for you over the next six to 9 months. That's what will be important.
Brilliant advice. Just to wrap up then, Damien, quick question, Damien. How you doing? Does the CSF have to be match funded by the promoter? If so, does it need to be in place before drawdown?
Okay, good question, Damien. It can be, the word matched is used a lot, but it's actually 5,000. It's not quite matched at all.
Sure.
So the 5,000 would need to be invested before the first tranche by 25k by Enterprise Ireland. So and that would be in 5k in ordinary shares. Now it can come from the promoter, it can come from an existing shareholder in the company, or it can come from a third party, but it has to be in the form of ordinary shares. So it doesn't necessarily, so say you're 100% shareholder in your company when you apply, and maybe somebody offers you 5,000 in ordinary shares, if it's a relative or a friend or an investor, it can be from a third party. There's no problem there. It doesn't necessarily directly have to come from you as the promoter, but it would need to be invested in the form of ordinary shares.
Certainly 5,000 sounds a little less daunting than 50,000. So
certainly, yes, absolutely.
There's some good news, Damien. Grania says there's limits how many months you need to be in business.
No, I mean, the important point is that the company, individuals can apply as well. So you could even not have incorporated your company yet and maybe be working at it in the background yourself as an individual. So, but the company can't be any more than 3 years from incorporation. So if your incorporation date, and this is up to the call close date. So if you're over, so by the 18th of August, if your company is over 3 years from its incorporation date in terms of registration with the CRO, at that point, by that date, you wouldn't be eligible. But so it needs to be under 3 years from incorporation. And there are particular criteria as well around, just to highlight, around the level of equity already in the company and the revenue sales already in the company. And we've actually changed the criteria to try and open it up to be more available to companies maybe that might not have been for previous competitive start funds. So for example, at the time of application, if a company had over 60,000 in revenues in the current year or any one of previous years, or had over that amount, it wouldn't have been eligible. But actually now we've increased that to 100. So you can have up to 100k in sales already this year, which would be it's great if you have it, or in any one of the previous years, and you could apply, and that's one of the criteria. But the equity criteria then is you can have up to 150,000 in equity already invested in the company before you apply, before the call close date. And the reason why we've done that is it can be quite hard to raise seed funding, and we find there's an awful lot of companies that maybe are at that pre-seed stage but haven't quite got enough traction to raise that seed round of investment. But they are quite progressed. They may have some sales, and they were deemed ineligible in the past. So we've tried to open up the criteria to help those companies at that stage as well.
Brilliant. Okay, and we're going to wrap up here, but just this was a valid point. I mean, one massive advantage to me of getting the likes of the Competitive Start Fund is not only the money, but the expertise that Enterprise Ireland can give me in helping me grow my business. So can you tell me a little bit about, like, obviously the money is great, but the mentoring, the advice, your knowledge and your insight in helping a business get to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, the same with local enterprise and with Enterprise Ireland, the non-financial supports, I think, are as valuable as the financial, and an awful lot of companies, appreciate the level of network that Enterprise Ireland has, the mentor network, our contacts overseas. We help companies, understand the market, understand what customers they can target. And we've an excellent market research centre, which is available for access by local enterprise clients as well. that we can arrange for their access to that. So, it is important to leverage the non-financial supports available from Enterprise Ireland and from local enterprise as much as to focus on the financial, although the finance is always very important.
Brilliant. I'm going to put you on the spot now. You were dreading this one. So we're going to bring Wendy in now in a second, but I want you to leave me with 5 tips, right? 5 tips for a business applying for the Competitive Start Fund. So what are the 5 things?
Okay, 5. Well, I definitely would start with, contact the business innovation centres and get either the one-on-one training or support on the application. So they're available on the webpage, and I think they're on the slide there as well. There's 2 of them next week, and but there's email addresses for the BICs there as well. There's Dublin, there's South East, West BIC and Cork BIC. And, Dublin, just a flag, doesn't necessarily just cover Dublin. It covers Dublin, Kildare, Meath, Louth, Cavan, Monaghan as well. And the South East covers counties in the South East area. Cork BIC covers Kerry as well. So don't be overly concerned about your jurisdiction. I think it's as important that you get the help. I'd also say is practice and start planning and prepare early. Practice your pitch and, plan and prepare very, very well. Also, if you know someone who's applied before or you've access to someone who understands the process and has been through it before, ask for their help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Be as clear as possible. There's nothing as difficult as reviewing an application that is missing information, and give yourself the best shot. Remember that you are competing with other people. Some companies that might be more progressed than yours, some that maybe have been through the process before. So give yourself the best opportunity. How many tips is that now, Greg?
I think you're up to about 4. A bit woolly now.
One more.
Just one more.
Yeah, I think on the video pitch as well. So, be positive, be yourself, be positive, but also, be very, very clear. Don't assume that anyone watching the pitch knows everything about your product. It's almost like you're explaining it to, an alien from Mars. Just be black and white, because the assessors are, it's the same with the final pitch as well. We see so many different types of product opportunities, and don't get too bogged down in jargon. There can be a tendency to that. And sometimes, the last thing you want to do is read an application or review a pitch and say, I really don't even understand what the company does. So be as basic as that. And if you've got something to show or demo, show the visual as well. And the best of luck to everyone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you're ready, apply. And if you have questions, contact the local enterprise office.
Yeah, ask for help. Absolutely.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Teri. I'm delighted to bring on the screen now. Now's your moment to shine, Wendy. A big hello. I know I couldn't figure out whether there was nervous energy or you were posting on Instagram there a little moment ago. But it's lovely to have you, Wendy. You're very, very welcome.
Thanks, Greg.
Brilliant. So I think no better way to start. I mean, you've successfully got the Competitive Start Fund. You've raised $750,000 this year alone. You're a finalist at Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur last year. So an incredible business. But why don't you just tell us your story?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just sharing my screen there. So just a little bit about kind of what led me to my business, which is TeachKloud. When I, first started growing up, I really wanted to be a doctor. So, they got to save lives. They made a bit of money as well. And during my leaving cert year, my mom was actually diagnosed with cancer. So I was absolutely, devastated and did quite badly in my leaving cert as a result. So fast forward a year later, I got into early childhood education in CIT, not really knowing what it entailed. But during my degree and PhD, I went into a lot of different early childhood services. And I just started to realize the amount of work that they do, essentially. So they were spending hours on paperwork, and they were living in fear of unannounced inspections. There's actually 500 different regulations that teachers can be inspected on in early childhood services. So I then created TeachKloud, which is an early years and preschool management software that essentially helps them comply with regulations and spend less time on paperwork. So we have everything from attendance to what the children ate, to accident forms, to COVID-19 checklists. So it really enables them to, streamline all of their paperwork in one place. And then, just with the CSF, I got that in 2019, and it really enabled me to upgrade our product. So really focus on hiring the right people, and then demonstrating value to our investors. So like you said, then after the CSF, like literally a few months after, I was able to raise, 750,000. So look, I'm looking forward to hearing all of your questions, and if I can help with anything at all, even after this, just add me on LinkedIn, and we can catch up.
So what a lovely story. What a lovely story. So you said you applied for the CSF. What year was it again? Sorry.
2019. So like
2019. Okay. So do you think? Here's a question I have for you. Do you think that even going through that process and getting the Competitive Start Fund gave you even a stronger footing when talking to other private investors? The fact that Enterprise Ireland were already backing you and supporting you.
Yeah, definitely. Not only is it that it's Enterprise Ireland and they've invested, so of course they do their due diligence. So if they've invested in you, it means there's something in your company already. But then also, if you actually use the funding well, you'll be able to, whether it's that you're investing in product or you're investing in, getting more customers, all of that works for good when you're talking to investors. So definitely it was a great starting point for TeachKloud.
Brilliant. And so why did you apply? So when you went to apply, what was your rationale for applying? What was the purpose of applying?
It's 50,000, as Teri was saying, it's much more than the funding. So for me, of course, it was the funding. As I said, we invested in product, key personnel, and enabled us to raise further funding. But you get a development advisor as well. You get access to mentorship. Like one of the mentors that I was appointed to still mentors me to this day. And my development advisors were just amazing, even just giving me advice on how to actually raise further funding. And then also I got further funding from EI as well. So it's a combination of everything. It's the financial services, but it's also the mentoring that you get. It's the funds that you get access to. And so, for example, they have offices all over the world. So if you want to, go into a different country, there's an enterprise office in London, and yeah, it's a lot that you get with CSF and EI in general.
Brilliant. And talk to me about the application process, because I hate applications, right? So talk to me how that was, what you did, any tips or tricks for anyone else thinking of applying before the 18th of what needs to go into that application form.
Yeah, look, I hate applications. I think everyone's exactly the same. After I finished my thesis, I was like, I'm never writing another application again. But the application is actually, it's almost like a business plan. So it's really just you demonstrating why anyone should invest in you in the first place. And what I did was Teri already mentioned this, but the BICs, they're amazing. I worked specifically with Larry O'Donoghue in the Cork BIC, and they really will sit down one-to-one with you and go through the application. So the application, it is long. I would say start early. And if you're watching this right now and you're eligible to apply, go and apply, or if you're afraid, you're not sure, go into EI, ring them up and ask them, because they will guide you. They're seasoned professionals, like Teri, like you said at the start, has been there for over 15 years. And they're really friendly people. But definitely with the application, make sure that what you're saying is actually grounded in reality, and that you have some sort of validation as well, whether that's a beta, a product, or you have some customers. But start early and get advice, whether it's from the BICs or from EI themselves.
Okay, lovely. So, and this follows on for what we're chatting about now. Magdalena on YouTube is saying, how did you find the whole process, and what was the biggest, most challenging part for you? This is of the Competitive Start Fund.
The process is fine. Like I said, if you get the right advice, and it actually, the process isn't that bad. You do the application, then if you're shortlisted, there's the video pitch. There's also going up to Dublin and pitching as well. I think probably the most difficult part is getting everything together. So as a startup, there's a lot of things that you're not sure of, things like finances, how many customers you'll get, perhaps you're not sure exactly of the opportunity. So the main thing you can do is just ensure that what you do stays grounded in reality, that you can back up what you're saying, whether that's from actual customers or it's from, it's from theory or it's from reports that have come out about your sector. But I actually think the application process is fine, and there's a lot of help out there as well.
I love this question. So this question is, how can you, now I need to know the answer, I'm making notes here. How can you convince an investor to invest in your business? What do you need to show them?
I'd say there's a lot of things, and I can only talk from my perspective, but the first thing I think is that you have to be enthusiastic about the product. Like, it's infectious. If you love what you do, other people are going to love it and they're going to want to jump on. I'm thinking of companies like Tesla. I'm thinking of companies like Google and Facebook. Like, they had a vision, they knew where they wanted to go, and they were able to get people behind them. And that starts with having the right founder and the right attitude towards your business. And then second to that, then, people will always talk about the team, but like, I was a sole founder, and so I didn't have a huge team around me. And so if you don't have a great team, you don't have people that have founded multiple companies that have scaled to millions of euro, you just have yourself. Actually having customers is like one of the, the best validation that you can get. So before I even started talking to investors, of course, I was doing a PhD on this. So I had a lot of data of me actually going into preschool services. Before I ever even decided if TeachKloud was a thing or not, I had talked to over 1,000 preschool owners and managers. I'm not saying you're going to necessarily talk to 1,000 people, but if you can get, even 10 people saying, yes, I'll pay for this, this is an amazing idea, that's one way to definitely, whether it's investors or you want to get that amazing CTO or that amazing salesperson, that's one way to get people invested in you, but also the product. Because like, people invest in people rather than the product or the idea.
Absolutely. And, you're so passionate and engaging. I understand why people would gravitate towards you. But, you need both things working together. I love that idea, because a lot of entrepreneurs are one man or one woman bands. And we don't have a massive team behind us. So the idea of getting customers is a brilliant piece of advice. You were involved in Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur last year and did brilliantly, by the way. You also were an ambassador for, I think it was National Women's Enterprise Day last year, and you availed of local enterprise office initiatives such as, I think, the priming grant. How has the local enterprise office helped your business?
So with the local enterprise office, we had quite a long relationship. So I first started off in the Rubicon doing an incubator called Student Inc. And that was actually where I first heard of the Leos. And I went into them literally just seeking advice. And I would say, if you haven't contacted your local enterprise office, mine was South Cork, they're amazing. Definitely go into them, even if it's just to start off that first conversation. I'm asking them, would I be eligible to even apply, whether it's the feasibility or it's the priming grant. Start off that relationship, and it's the same thing with investors. So my experience with the local enterprise office has been amazing. So I got the priming grant. I also then engaged with them through New Frontiers and the Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur. So like, the main thing, less about my experience and more about the people that are listening. If you haven't talked to your local enterprise office, even before you go to EI, go to your Leos, because sometimes you can actually get funding like the feasibility or primary grants without having to, give up any equity and without having to pay the full thing back either. So.
Sort of giving up equity. This is James, and it's funny because sometimes as businesses we're so worried about giving away a business that's not making any money. Oh my God, I don't want to give away 10% of a business that's not generating anything yet. But James was asking, when you're evaluating your business, for example, is this fear? Do you feel like you may be giving away too much equity in your company too early? And I suppose that applies for private investment as well as public investment, such as the CSF. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's better to have 90% of something than 100% of nothing. So it's really an individual perspective. If you feel that, the valuation isn't sitting right with you, then that's a personal decision. For me, how I looked at it was, what I just said, it's better to have 90% of something than 100% of nothing. And also, the great thing with EI is they will keep investing in your company. So after that, and Teri alluded to this, after that 10% of CSF, I was able to get further investment from EI. And like Teri was saying, they will dilute, they'll never go more than 10%. So it's a great relationship to have. And it's also, there are some investors, they will only give, it's only about like the funding. And it's only about the equity, whereas EI, you can keep going back to them, whether it's mentoring, whether it's support, whether it's the different competitions that they engage in. So it's a bit more than just the equity and funding. So again, personal decision, really weigh up your company and where you're going and the vision, and see if that funding is right for you.
That's great advice. Fantastic. God, I could speak to you all day. I could have spoken to Teri all day. This could be a lunch and learn that's 7 hours long at this rate, but it won't be, unfortunately. Wendy, thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to put you on the spot now. Can you give me your 5 top tips to entrepreneurs looking for investment, be it Enterprise Ireland or even a private investor looking to invest in your business? So what would your 5 tips be?
I think I alluded to some of these. So the first one would definitely be get some kind of validation behind the idea. So you should be your biggest skeptic. That's the first advice. Be thinking like an investor. They're thinking, why should I invest in you? Do you have people that have bought into your idea? Are there people that are willing to pay for this? So be your biggest skeptic. Get validation. Do as much research as you can. Go out to customers. Ask them straight up, like, would you buy this? Is this something that would make an impact on your business or your lives? And then also, don't take rejection personally. So when I first started, I got a lot of no's. A lot of people don't really know that much about early years education. They think, they're just kind of sitting down playing with children. That's not really a job. It's not really a profession. So I also had to get a lot of no's, but educate investors and other people around me about, why they should invest in TeachKloud. So really have whether that's finances or the research backing your idea or validation, really have that nailed down. I don't know if that's 5 things or not.
That sounds good to me. Sounds good. To be honest, it's an avalanche of good advice. That's what it is. So, Wendy, I just want to wish you continued success. I want to wish TeachKloud continued success. I'm sure we're going to be reading a lot more about you and your business in the near future. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, as I is patiently waiting, thought he'd never get on to speak to us. We have the amazing Thomas McEvoy, the head of the local enterprise office in Louth. A big hello to you, Thomas.
Greg, how are you?
Good.
That's good.
Good, fantastic stuff. So if we're not ready for the competitive start fund yet, which we may not be, and we may not even know whether we are or not, the first stop for a small business is to contact one of your local enterprise offices and have a chat with you guys, because you guys are going to give the advice.
Absolutely. And there are 31 local enterprise offices in Ireland. We're placed in each of the local authorities throughout the country. And I suppose our first job is to act as a first stop shop. So the nearest analogy I would have is we're a bit like a GP. If there's something wrong, you go to your GP. The GP might in turn refer you to a consultant in Dublin for a particular procedure, and that could be the CSF with EI, for example. Or they may refer you to go get something from the pharmacy, and that might mean going to talk to an accountant or a consultant and so on. So really, we're very much the first step along that pathway to finding a solution. And our first job really is to help that business either start or grow or develop or find its space. And we can do that through a range of different measures. I suppose they broadly fall into 2 categories. And the first category would be all the various non-financial supports that the LEOs can provide. And then the second category is we can provide financial supports or direct clients to where they can get other financial supports, such as the CSF. And we understand the landscape that businesses starting out have to try and navigate. And it's quite a complex landscape if you're not familiar with it already. And our job really is to keep up to date with what are the products, what are the offerings, what are the programs that people starting in business or wanting to grow their business can tap into. So we can help steer anybody who is looking at starting a business on that pathway. And for us, the CSF certainly is one of the products that we can point people to when they get to that stage of their development. But many won't be at that stage, and many inquiries that come into us are, they're not ready for CFF or they're not eligible for CSF, but we can help them. And as I mentioned, that help comes broadly in two forms, either non-financial and the financial support. So in terms of the non-financial supports, I mean, anybody who contacts us, we would firstly arrange to sit down with them through a clinic. And out of that, we would map out where that business is, what it wants to achieve, where it wants to go, how we can help them do that. And very often that can lead to many people looking at setting up, going on a Start Your Own Business course. And each of the 31 offices run a series of these programs throughout the year. Typically, we would run 8, 9, 10 per annum in County Louth. And that gives them a very strong foundation in all aspects of what they need to look at when starting out in business. And everything from, they looking at themselves and looking at their own support network in terms of the time and commitment and, the pull that will have on them personally, right through to, how are they going to sell? What is their product? Where's their market? How are they pricing it? What about the financials? Where are they getting funding and so on? So a lot of, as I say, the early stage supports are around getting the right advice, helping make the right decisions. When you do get the funding, putting it in the right areas that will give you the best return. Because with any business starting out, it's not a case of just getting the money. It's about getting the money and spending it correctly in the right areas. Because particularly for startup businesses, resources are going to be extremely limited, and spending them in the right way is going to be ever more important. And that's why getting the right advice is critical. And allied to the Start Your Own Business courses that we run, we offer one-to-one mentoring. So you get your general information on the Start Your Own course. In the case of County Louth, that would be over 8 modules. And then we follow that up with, well, how does that apply, or how can we make that real in your own business? So you get the general, you get the specific, and then you're able to roll that out. And then for some businesses,
that seems like a great path to even start to get towards the competitive start fund. Really, really nice path. Brilliant.
Correct. Yeah, and the whole idea here is to give people in business a pathway of supports. And as I say, sometimes that leads into CSF. Sometimes it leads into the New Frontiers program. And the output of a New Frontiers program might be that somebody now has a product that's really well thought out, thought through, it's validated in the marketplace, and then they come back to us in the Leo with either a priming or a business expansion grant application. And what we find from our experience is that the participants that have come out of New Frontiers programs present their business case in a much stronger way than, let's say, somebody who comes in off the street. And we can notice that difference, let's say, and it helps because, as Teri was mentioning earlier, any funding is a competitive process. So, if you want to put your best foot forward, certainly getting the right advice, whether it's through a Start Your Own Business course, taking on the mentoring, going through a New Frontiers program, and then making an application for whether it's priming support from us or perhaps the CSF from EI. But our job really at the end of the day is to help to steer and graduate a company onto the EI program. So we work very much in partnership with Enterprise Ireland, and the funding we get is from Enterprise Ireland. So in a way, when we meet somebody, we're thinking, can this person in 6 or 60 months become an Enterprise Ireland client? Now, that covers businesses that are in the manufacturing or internationally traded service space, or those that have that potential. But we also talk to businesses who are, let's say, service businesses that won't necessarily be international, that might be personal services, retail services, and so on. And we can help those businesses through a number of other supports. And they include getting that advice, getting the mentorship, getting the availing of the Start Your Own Business courses, but also products like, once they're up and going 6 months, availing of the trading online voucher. which is a really practical helpful support, particularly if you're in retail or selling products or items, and that could be setting up a payment engine or a booking engine for your business. And then if you're in the food industry, there's a very practical food starter program which we have designed in conjunction with Borbia. And that allows businesses to get a real feel for how do I start my food business in terms of health, in terms of market, in terms of getting on a shelf. And then you can graduate up into the Borbia SuperValue Leo Food Academy program. So there's some real practical supports there to help businesses get up and going. We also have products like the Feasibility Grant Scheme. So if somebody were they have a very good idea, but you need more than an idea to get into business. And maybe how do you convert that idea into a prototype, or how do you validate the idea? And in certain cases, we can help that process through supporting a feasibility grant to move that idea along to a business concept and a business product. And then the output of that might be that somebody might go on to a New Frontiers program, or they might come into us for priming support. So the whole idea here is that there is a pathway. Businesses should come in and talk to us. We'll help map out that pathway, and there are supports. No matter what type of business you're in, there are supports. However, if you're manufacturing and if you're in a traded service that has potential to trade internationally, there are other and more supports, which tend to be the more financial type supports. But nonetheless, we would encourage anybody thinking of starting a business to come in and talk.
Brilliant. I mean, and again, the question is, don't make assumptions. Contact the local enterprise office, have a conversation with them, and see what's applicable to you. In many ways, for a lot of clients out there, it could be the business mentoring could be 10 times more valuable than the monetary value of a business priming grant, for example. So at the end of the day, sometimes as a business owner, it can be a lonely place at the top when you're running your business. And to having some comfort of someone that can nurture your business, support your business, confirm that you're doing the right thing, give you advice when you need to, and alert you to other supports and advice in the business world that's there for you, that's invaluable. So I think, for small businesses, you're not alone. Contact your local enterprise office. They are there to help. And it's not all financial. Sometimes some of those soft supports can be even more valuable. Down on the bottom of the screen there, we probably know it at this stage, but if you are looking at what supports are available from your local enterprise office, you will find them at localenterprise.ie/response. That's localenterprise.ie/response. And I know Teri alluded to it earlier on, that a lot of the successful CSF companies that have availed of the CSF fund have come from the local enterprise office. So these guys will even help ask you the questions and prepare you for that particular application and bring you to the level that you need to get to. So really, really important to do so. You had some lovely tips. I want to throw them up on the screen before we say goodbye, Thomas. So, because I think as businesses, we often get blinkered with our tunnel vision selling our product. We don't put our shoes in the shoes of the investor when it comes to pitching our business, and we start to focus maybe on the wrong things. And even Teri talked about talking too much jargon that the average person doesn't understand. You had some really nice tips for investment. Let me throw them up on the slide there. Maybe you can talk us through those priorities, what funders will look for.
Well, Greg, it's a very good point, because it's more than just the idea, and it's how does that idea sit in the market. So, any business is going to be as good, not just as good as the product or the idea, but very much as good as the person or the team driving it. So having a management team or having a support team around you to ensure that when you get the knocks, you can get back up. And trust me, that will happen in business. No matter how much we say, oh, that won't happen to me, you can assume there will be knocks, there will be no's. But the more resilient you are, the greater the chance of succeeding in the marketplace. So that's a very strong aspect, and in terms of when investors are looking at a project. Another thing would be in terms of, what is this business addressing? What is the niche? Where is the value add? What is it that's unique that you're bringing about to create a solution for that need or that challenge in the marketplace? How do you differentiate yourself? I mean, if there are other products doing exactly the same, as good as you, what will convince the market to select you? Is it your responsiveness? Is it that you have more features or benefits? Is it that you can deliver quicker? Is it that you've got a more competitive, easier to run, maintenance free type product compared to others? But there has to be some distinguishing factors that make it unique and address a niche, and that's important. The obvious one is finance. That if we're putting funding in, what is the promoter putting skin in the game? Because we don't take all the risk, we help share it, and we're looking for clients who can share that risk with us. So promoters will beg, borrow, steal, look to family and friends, and the old saying, family, friends, and fools. But what is the promoter putting in from their side? What can we put in? And maybe what else is coming in terms of bank funding, debt finance, and so on. So in other words, what's the funding cocktail? What does it look like? And what part do we have in that? A couple of the other things will be the market. Has the, and Teri and Wendy mentioned this earlier, but has your product or your service been validated in the marketplace, and have you got feedback? And if you have, share that with potential investors, because if you're convinced about the product, and if the marketplace is convinced about your product, and there's feedback to prove that should be part of an application, because it gives confidence to the investors that this isn't just thought up in your own head. This is actually real, and people out there will actually go and buy and purchase what it is you're offering. So they'd be the key bits. Look to yourself, look to the market, look at the funding, and look at what niche and value add you're bringing through your business.
My head is spinning now. I just want to go and create a new company after today. I'm so pumped and excited. I want to leave everyone with just a couple of simple links, just for you guys, just to bear in mind. Obviously, for the local enterprise office support, check out localenterprise.ie/response. We have the link there for the Competitive Start Fund. We need to act on it soon. Deadline's August the 18th. So that's enterpriseireland.com/CSF. If you have any questions or queries, drop an email regarding the CSF fund to csf@enterprise-ireland.com. So any queries, csf@enterpriseireland.com. We also mentioned New Frontiers today. It's a fantastic incubator. If you haven't heard of New Frontiers, you may want to check the website out. It's newfrontiers.ie. It may or may not be something very, very interesting for your startup business. And then last but certainly not least, if you're looking at any additional Enterprise Ireland supports, you will find some of them at the website globalambition.ie/COVID. That's globalambition.ie/COVID. So there's some links for you guys to take away. I just want to bring Teri back in for a second. This is where we get all emotional now and we say goodbye to everyone. Teri, really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your words of wisdom.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, it's delighted to be here.
We've got to all go away and practice our video pitch now. That's what I'm taking away from that.
At least.
So thank you so much for your words of wisdom. A huge thank you to Wendy as well from TeachKloud. And last but certainly not least, again, the brilliant Thomas McEvoy from the local enterprise office in Louth. Thank you guys so much for being with us today.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Thanks.
No worries. See you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Now, you may have seen next week on next week's show, God, this freaked me out initially. So on next week's Lunch and Learn, so this is next Thursday, we have Meet the Revenue Commissioners. I didn't think I ever wanted to meet them. But we're going to be talking about the Employment Wage Subsidy Scheme and debt warehousing. So that's next week's Lunch and Learn. So stick it in your diary, and we'll see you next week for another Lunch and Learn. So from me, Greg Fry, we'll see you next week. Take care.
Your local enterprise office, helping your business respond.